You have skills and gifts and talents that are completely unique to you. And I believe that those were given to you for a reason. The secret to making the greatest impact while also experiencing the greatest feeling of fulfillment and alignment is operating within your zone of genius. If this is a new term to you, don't worry, we're going to break it all down in today's episode, along with some questions you can ask yourself to help clarify yours and make the impact you know you're meant to make. So grateful that you are joining me today. It's my favorite way to connect with you right now. I am loving this podcast. I know we've been going for a while now, but I'm just so grateful. Right before we hit record, we were like, wow, episode 155. Didn't we just celebrate our 100th episode? So if any of you are fellow podcasters or you know you have a podcast on your heart, just know that the magic truly is in consistency. Keep showing up and your community will find you. So wherever you're finding me today, wherever you're tuning in, I'm so grateful and cannot wait to get to know you like in real life. But today we're going to have a really important conversation because when I think about the women in this community and a couple dudes too, we don't want to leave you guys out. We talk a lot about getting into action around your big idea. But what about when you're in those early stages of like trying to even clarify what your big idea should be or what is your impact on the world? It could even be those of you who are plugging along, you're building a business and you realize that you can't keep doing all the things and you need to get really clear about your area of expertise and start to outsource the rest. Well, all of those things make it super important for you to get crystal clear on what your zone of genius is. And if you're kind of new to this term, I'm going to recommend my favorite book. This is a book that I send to pretty much everyone. I personally read it 2 to 3 times a year. Yes, I go back and I read the same book 2 to 3 times a year because it has made that big of an impact on me and my business and because I am always growing. So I'm going to tell you kind of how I define zone of genius. And then this book called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks is such a great tool to dive deeper into this conversation if you really like today's episode. So in The Big Leap, he really kind of defines your zone of genius as that place where, you just flow, where you are like waking up every day, you're working on something that lights your soul on fire, but you're also making a huge impact. And when I think about what the zone of genius conversation or what that term means to me, I think about it as the place where maximum impact meets maximum alignment, meaning I know that I'm working in alignment with how I'm wired, what my gifts are. I'm not trying to force anything. I think that when we're working out of alignment with our zone of genius, it feels hard. It feels like a struggle. It feels like we're trying to force an outcome. And I've definitely been in that place. So again, one of the reasons why I go back and I read The Big Leap, my favorite book, every single year. So I want to talk about why I think it's crucial to identify and always be working to clarify your zone of genius. I do think it's something that evolves as you do. So just know that it's not something you nail down once and then it never changes. I do think it evolves as we do, but if you're kind of in this conversation and in tune with how to identify where your current zone of genius is, I do think that it makes it easier to stay on track with it. So I'm going to talk to you about why it's important and then how to narrow it down if you have never thought about it, or if you have and it's just time for kind of like a little checkup and tune in to see, hey, is this still the truth, or do I really, have I evolved, and do I need to put some different things in place in order to get back into alignment? So number one, why is it crucial to get really clear about your unique zone of genius? Well, first and foremost, I think, and I actually know this to be true because I've been there and I've watched this happen for others. He talks about it a lot in the book, The Big Leap, that when we're operating out of alignment with our true genius, with our unique talents and skills and gifts, it actually creates frustration, can create overwhelm, even confusion. That feeling of like trying to force an outcome. I think if we spend too long ignoring this call to really step into our zone of genius, it can even start to negatively impact our health, the stress that it creates. So I actually think this sounds kind of extreme, but it's like a matter of life and death to get clear about how are you wired and how are you going to use your gifts to impact the world. So right now, if you feel like you're kind of like spinning your wheels and it's not actually making the impact you want, this might be an indication of why. So the second thing is, worse than just feeling frustrated or out of alignment or overwhelmed is getting to the place where you achieve the goal you thought you wanted, only to find that you feel unfulfilled. It's like that old adage of reaching the top of the ladder only to realize that you had the ladder leaning against the wrong wall. So you climb to the top of the ladder and it's not actually where you want to be. So then third reason I think it's important, those of you who already have a business, is, as your business grows, you're not supposed to be able to do all of the things. And when you are in the right business for you that aligns with your zone of genius, and you are clear about where your place in that business is, what aligns with your skills, what are the things that only you can do, it makes it way easier to let go of the tasks that are not in alignment with your zone of genius and that don't serve the highest impact you could make. It makes it way easier to start to delegate those and then scale faster and with way more ease. So, safe to say, getting clear about your zone of genius is, in my opinion, very, very important. And it's something that I actually spend a whole lot of time cultivating in my own business and for my own self. But when this conversation was kind of newer to me, it didn't really make sense. So if this is kind of new for you, and if you have never really thought about this, I want to give you some questions and really some things to reflect on. I'll also go ahead and post these in the show notes in case you want to sit down and actually read them all typed out. But for now, you can just kind of see what comes to your mind when we ask these questions. So the first one is, what kind of things, and you're asking yourself this, what kind of things am I doing when I feel most like me? Like the most authentic version of myself. What kind of things am I doing? Second question, if I removed all of the shoulds and the self-imposed expectations that I place on myself, what kind of impact would I want to make and for whom? If I removed the shoulds and the self-imposed expectations, what kind of impact would I want to make and for whom? Question 3, what are you gifted at that is so easy to overlook because it's second nature for you? This is also a great question to ask people around you. Ask them, what do you see that I'm really good at and it just seems like effortless? What's something I'm great at? It might feel kind of weird to ask people, but try it. See what other people say. See if it aligns with how you see yourself. So the question was, question 3, what are you gifted at? That's easy to overlook because it's second nature to you. Question 4, what challenges have you been through that you can help others overcome? I love this saying. I heard it on a coaching call for my mastermind. I believe it was Rory Vaden who said this, that we're often most equipped to serve the people that we once were. So what's a challenge you've overcome that you could help someone else overcome? Question number 5. There's only 6, so we're getting there to the end of the list. Question 5 is, who do you follow and resonate with? Who do you secretly compare yourself to? So 2 questions, really looking at the same thing, but like, who do you follow on social media, or maybe it's a celebrity, and you just resonate with their energy or what they put out there in terms of content? Or on the flip side, who's someone that you secretly see what they're up to and you compare yourself to? And that might seem kind of weird, like why would I go in search of people that I compare myself to? But the truth is that sometimes comparison actually points us in the direction of our own zone of genius, because if you're picking up on a great attribute of another person, maybe you're seeing that like you have some growth or there's some room for improvement before you feel like you're that attribute. But I think that we pick up on those things in other people that we have the seed of in ourselves. So if you're seeing the greatness in someone else, it's being reflected back to you because you have that same greatness within you. So it can actually be kind of healthy, if we're doing it in the right way, to look at where do I tend to compare myself or maybe even judge myself because I'm seeing the light and the greatness in another person. Okay, and then the last question, and this is kind of now taking everything that you've written down, and I do highly, highly recommend you go back and you do this. Take 30 minutes to an hour and actually do some deep journaling on this. The last question then is, how have other people taken those skills, those talents and abilities, and monetized them? With the internet and, so much technology available, there's infinite ways to turn any skill into a business. So if you want to find your zone of genius and turn it into a business, or find a career path that's really aligned for you, look for examples of other people who have the same qualities that you just identified, and look for how they either found a way to monetize that in their own business, or look for how they found a career that perfectly aligns with the qualities that you wrote down for yourself. So again, I'm going to put all of these in the show notes so that you can go back, you can read them, copy paste them into a document if you want to type your answers out. But I do believe that taking the time to develop this self-awareness and then going back and revisiting these questions periodically is a great way to make sure that we stay in line and in tune with our zone of genius. But to wrap this up, I want to talk a little bit about what prevents us from fully stepping in to our unique zone of genius. And take this from someone who has totally been there, been in her own way more times than I can count. I'm going to share with you some things that have stopped me from fully stepping in that I now, looking back, realize. And I think you're going to see yourself in one or two of these as well. The first one, I'm going to circle back to that question I asked earlier. It was question number 3. What are you gifted at that is so easy to overlook because it's second nature to you? I do believe that our zone of genius is often so second nature that we tend to downplay it or overlook it. Like, well, that's not that special. Oh, other people do that really easily too. For me, mine is connection. Like, I easily connect with people. It's probably one of the reasons why I get messages from a lot of you saying like, I feel like we're friends, right? And trust me, if we met in real life, we probably would be friends because I truly love people. And it's always been very easy for me to connect, to form a relationship, to create connection pretty much out of thin air. And it never seemed like that was really that big of a thing. And so it was easy for me to feel like, well, okay, I couldn't seriously like create a whole business out of that, right? Just like creating connection among women, among like-minded women. I couldn't create a business out of just talking about a struggle that I've overcome, right? Feeling like I wasn't enough or I wasn't ready, being in my own way. Like, there's no way that could be it. But if you look, Powerhouse Women is built on connection. And it's also built on having real and honest conversations about how not together we have it, right? And giving you resources for how to get out of your own way. So yes, you absolutely can create a business out of something right now that to you seems so second nature, you probably haven't even paused to acknowledge yourself for it. So that's number 1. Something else that I do know from my own experience has stopped me in the past from stepping in fully to my zone of genius and then monetizing it is I think I need to know exactly what things are going to look like before I ever get started. So before I write a book, I want to know exactly how that's going to look and have certainty that it's going to succeed. Or, working on my speaking skills. I wanted to step on stage and be totally this amazing speaker first time out the gate. And that's really not true. Now I feel grounded in some of those things. Now I know that some of those things like speaking and writing are part of my zone of genius, But when I first started, I was terrible. So it doesn't mean that you wake up and the things that are your zone of genius you never have to work at. I think that's actually the opposite. But here's what I know to be true. When I'm standing on a stage, I feel the most like me. I feel the most alive. I feel most in tune with my own zone of genius. It's a feeling I can't even describe. And I think there's probably something for you, even if it feels scary, something that makes you excited at the thought of mastering. And that is a clue to your zone of genius. But what might stop you from stepping into it is not wanting to feel like a beginner. And sometimes the things that are part of our zone of genius, we have to be a beginner at before we're a genius at them. So if you wait to feel ready, you're definitely going to miss out on the opportunity to impact some of the people you are meant to impact. I want you to remember that. I guess we're now on the third thing that can prevent us from fully stepping into our zone of genius is comparing our zone of genius to someone else's, or believing the lies that imposter syndrome will tell us. If you haven't listened to that episode, go back a couple episodes, listen to the one on imposter syndrome, because that is one of the quickest ways to rob yourself of the opportunity to make an impact. So doing that internal work. But then the last one, and I think this often stops people more than any of the others. It's waiting for someone else to validate your zone of genius. Waiting for someone else to say, oh yes, you would be the best at that. You should definitely start a podcast. You should definitely have an event. In fact, in my experience, oftentimes your zone of genius only makes sense to you at first. So like when I started really going all in with Powerhouse Women, people didn't know me as being this amazing speaker, having an amazing event. I was known for having a business in a whole different industry. And even as supportive as like my family, my husband, my friends were, people kind of questioned it. Oh, you have this great business. Why do you want to pivot? Why do you want to go in this other direction? Because to me, it was very clear that I was being led to do the thing I was meant to do. But on the surface, it didn't necessarily make sense at the time. I could see a vision that no one else could see. So if I had waited around for someone to validate that I was going in the right direction, and sometimes I did, don't get me wrong, sometimes I was like, I don't know, is this the right move? But had I waited until I had that concrete validation from others, I never would have gotten started. So just know that sometimes your zone of genius, that perfect thing for you, is only going to make sense to you at first. And you just have to trust that feeling. It's going to feel scary, yes, but it will feel just as exciting as it does intimidating. I truly believe that. If it's an idea or a calling that you can't get over, you can't get it out of your mind, the only way you're going to find out if that's truly your zone of genius is if you give it a try. And I believe that when we're being prompted to step into something, when we're being prompted to do something or take that first little action, it's not on accident. It's either going to develop into your zone of genius or lead you down a path that's going to have you find yours. So this is why, just kind of to wrap this up, I think all of these reasons why we can easily get in our own way and why we can easily stop ourselves from pursuing our unique zone of genius, I think this is why having accountability, having community around you is so crucial. When maybe you can't get the validation that you're going in the right direction from the people in your life who know you the most, having a community that will breathe life into your big dreams is vital. And that is exactly why Powerhouse Women exists. It was the thing that I needed when I started on this path, and I really hope that you'll find that same sense of community and family and support here as I've found. Because you know what we say, that you are not meant to do business or life alone. And I do believe that by plugging into community and surrounding yourself with others who are also on the quest to find their unique zone of genius, that's how you'll find yours too and make the impact that you know you are meant to make.